G'day guys, welcome back to the channel. What we're going to talk about today is following on from some of the previous videos that were posted about improving your squat and your squat performance and what the ideal squat looks like. We've already spoken about an ankle stretch, a really beneficial ankle stretch, one of the best ankle stretches that I've ever seen that can quickly help you improve the mobility of your ankle and therefore improve the function of your squat if you suffer from knee pain, if you suffer from ankle pain. It's a brilliant exercise to help you combat that. So the next step from this is we're sort of working on something at the bottom. We also want to work at something at the top. So today we're going to talk about a really great hip stretch. Like a lot of these stretches, they may not necessarily, or it may not necessarily be something that you've seen before. And this one that we're about to go through technically is, it can be a little bit challenging to do, but if you can nail it, the results are fantastic. Again, if the banded ankle stretch from previous video was probably the best ankle stretch I've ever seen, this is probably one of the top two hip stretches that I've ever seen in terms of its ability to make genuine change quickly. So it's something that it's really a must do for anyone trying to improve the function of their lower half, especially those who suffer from back pain. We know that back pain is one of those things that's heavily reliant on normal hip function, and if your hips are stiff, hips are tight, it's hard to do that. So this is a capsular stretch, so much like the ankle stretch. The hip capsule itself is an interesting structure. Your hip, as most people are aware, is a ball and a socket joint. Now, we think of most stretches as muscular stretches, so a lot of people know about stretching their glutes. We stretch our hamstrings, we stretch our quads, we stretch the muscles in those areas, we stretch our groin. But we often forget that deeper to all of those soft tissues is the joint capsule. Now that ball and socket joint, if we wrap that up in a really thick layer of tin foil or plastic wrap, that's kind of the function of the hip capsule. So when it rotates, externally rotates. When it externally rotates, it tightens up that capsule to make things nice and congruent, nice and strong and stable so that we can perform really well. So we want to make sure that if that starts to get a little bit stiff, that we have a really simple way to undo that. Now, we'll touch on the exercise in a second, but one of the things we always need to make sure that we're aware of is why those hips get stiff in the first place. So any exercise is incomplete unless you then follow it up with something that changes the cause of that tightness. So in the case of hip stiffness, what we often find is that the majority of hips get tight because we spend so much time sitting throughout the day. So when we're in this sort of sitting 90-degree shape, any chair, whether it's a couch, whether it's a computer desk, whether it's a car seat, kitchen table, it doesn't really matter what sitting position that you're in or the traditional sitting position that you're in. If you're stuck at 90 degrees, that hip-knee angle, over time, your body starts to get stiff and tight around that shape. If you put your arm in plaster, kept it there for a while, if you take it out of that plaster, that elbow is going to feel stiff. And although we're not stuck in that 90-degree shape for 2 weeks on end, it can be very easy for most adults to spend 10 to 14 hours a day sitting, particularly in today's climate. So that hip stiffness can quickly accumulate if we're not aware. So having an exercise to address that is really important. So what does it look like? So the idea is that when we do this stretch, is that we want to be on our hands and knees. And what we're thinking of here is we're trying to imagine that the thigh bone is pressing out the back corner of our hip. So we'll choose this hip to start with. So what we want to do is we want to take the other foot back and have that foot on the ground. And what we're going to try and do is keeping our trunk stable, shoulders in line with our hips, we're going to shift everything across to the side that we're kneeling on basically. And what you should feel is that as you get to a certain point, you'll start to feel some pressure, maybe not at the back of the hip, but more so at the back corner of the hip. And this is exactly what we're looking for. Now, with any of these stretches, we want to make sure that you can find exactly what you feel comfortable is your tightness. So when we're in this position, you can sort of shift over the top of your knee, you can come back down into a deeper position, and scour through that sort of that lateral position as you shift it over, and go looking for where you feel your tightness. So for me, I feel a little bit of tightness here, and we're just going to stay here. So we're going to stay here for 30 seconds to 2 minutes, whatever you feel comfortable with. So there's actually 3 components to this stretch. It's all the same concept, but the position changes to hit different parts of the capsule. So what we want to find here is we just want to hang out here, spend some time here, like we did with the ankle stretch previously. You can take a deep breath in and then tense up all the muscles around your hip, get those muscles involved so we can add the muscular component to this. And then when you breathe out, relax, and you might feel and you might find you can actually go a little bit further than you could before. Now, when you're doing this stretch, what a lot of people tend to do is they tend to keep their shoulders still and just shift their hips. And what we end up doing is, as you can see with my back, we sort of rotate through the back, drop down on that hip. Where in actual fact, you want to keep everything parallel to the ground, and we just want to come across as a unit. So we don't want to dissociate our hips from our shoulders. We want to keep everything in line together. The only thing that's really moving across apart from your shoulders, the angle's changing at my shoulders here, but it's all the pressure's going through that hip. So once we've spent 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and 2 minutes doing this, we can change the foot position. So one of the beautiful functions of the hip is there's a lot of rotation. So part 2 of this is with your foot. If you rotate your foot underneath your other leg and drop your back leg, we're now in an externally rotated position. And what that means is when we do the same thing again, so we shift back across to that same side, you should feel now that the pressure is more towards your glutes, the center of your bottom. Maybe there's some piriformis in here, some of your sort of your hip rotators, but we're just hitting a different part of that hip joint capsule. So again, we can move sort of over it a little bit, we can come down on it a little bit. We want to find that corner that feels quite tight, and we want to hang out here. So again, we're always imagining that thigh bone is pressing out the back of our bottom. You shouldn't feel like you have to drop down too low. If you're staying sort of parallel to the ground, you should be able to feel that sort of tightness or that pressure come on pretty quickly. And again, we want to stay here. And as you did before, take a deep breath in, hold that squeeze for 5 seconds, and then relax, and then you should feel like you can get a little bit further than before. And then the third part of this, again, it's just going out the other direction. So we've done straight up and down, we've done externally rotated. What we're trying to do now is we want to do internal rotation. So in this case, that hip rotates out. Now we don't want to rotate to the point where we start to bend our back. As you can see with me, there's a certain point that I get to where I run out of hip range, and the only way that I can go further is if I hike my hip up and bend my back. So obviously we don't want to go past that point. So staying nice and still, we're going to rotate that foot out. So this time we want the leg back out again so that most of the weight's going through this hip. And same thing again, we're going to shift across to that side, looking for that tightness and that pressure, And what you might find is the first sort of area was around here, the second was at the back. This one's probably going to be a little bit more around the front. Now some people can feel like they sort of pinch or impinge a little bit in the hip. If that's the case, don't be so deep into the hip. Feel free to come out of that a little bit more. You might find being sort of 90 degrees is better for you. And then just come across and find that tightness. So for me, I can feel that more at the top here. This just hits a different part of that capsule. So same thing again, breath in. Big squeeze, hold for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and then relax. And you might find that you can move further into the stretch than before. Now, as I was saying before, it's such a powerful stretch because it works quickly. Now, what I like to do with most of these stretches, just so that you can see how impactful it can be, is to stand up and do a squat first, do this exercise, then do a squat again, and hopefully you'll feel a difference. Now, I didn't do this, and I'm going to come out of frame here, but you'll hopefully see that when I squat down again, I should drop down a little bit deeper on this side compared to this side. So if I can do that in sort of line with a good squat of feet straight, knees out. So I feel like I can drop down pretty well here, but I just don't feel like I can translate that well to this side at the moment. So I'm going to have to even that up at some point. But if you can spend 2-3 minutes on this, it'll be fantastic. Now, the other thing that you can add to this, as you may have seen with the ankle stretch, is a power band. So if you can tie the band to something that's not going to move, you want to make sure that when you're in this position, that the band is hooked into your hip and pulling laterally, so straight out to the side, to open up and gap that hip. Excuse me. So what that does is it just ramps the exercise up even further. So if you're looking for fast gains, if you're looking to reclaim some of that normal function, that hip capsule stretch with those 3 different positions is beautiful. It's a really, really, really good stretch. So please give it a go. Test and retest before and afterwards to see how you feel. So again, if you have any questions, please let us know in the comments below. Please consider subscribing and sharing this around so that other people can pick up on it as well. And if you have any other requests, any other questions, any other concerns, please let us know. We're really working hard to make sure that we're giving everyone the support that they need and that we can have your questions answered. We want to make sure that everyone feels like they're being heard, and hopefully these videos are a small way of doing that. So until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll talk soon. Bye.